We are loaded at running back. The question is, are we looking at another 1,000-yard running back at Oklahoma State, or are we going to do it by committee and rush for over 2,500 yards collectively? With this O-line, I think you'll be surprised.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms as well as YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at AllDayOState. And today, we're brought to you by FanDuel. Get in the game with FanDuel. Every moment matters a little bit more. So here we are in the spring, and we did a little bit of a breakdown on the quarterbacks, which I think it'll be fun to readdress some of these positions as fall camp kind of gets underway. So that's definitely something that we need to do. In the meantime, we're going to talk about the running backs a little bit. And when I said in the intro that we're loaded, I firmly believe that. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think a lot of it has to do with the continuity we have at offensive line. You take continuity and then you add in a bunch of more talent. And we are seeing that there's a lot of competition on the offensive line right now. So we could potentially have 4 new offensive linemen starting that didn't start last season. Now, one of those we'll talk about. Cole Birmingham is a little bit of an outlier, but nonetheless, we're pretty deep. And if you're deep on the offensive line and you're deep at running back and you know you're going to have some questions at quarterback, doesn't it lend itself to potentially being a better running team, especially when you take into consideration that we have true tight ends and we have people like Braden Cassidy that have moved to a traditional fullback type of role. This is all designed to open up the seams a little bit for the tight end position, which means the linebackers have to respect that, which means they're not coming in and filling gaps without considering what's behind them. So the new tight end position, going away from Cowboy back, is supposed to help open up some lanes for the running backs. And when you go this deep, it's going to be pretty fun to watch. All right, so I think the common consensus is Ollie Gordon is the starter as of right now, and that's completely understandable. I do think it's fair that Elijah Collins is going to push him through the entirety of spring and fall, which is going to be a good combination to have because we have a multitude of running styles now, right? And it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Everybody knows that Ollie Gordon probably should have got the ball a lot more last year. Everybody knows that Dominic Richardson, we love Dom, but he wasn't the right fit. He wasn't the right guy. He wasn't the best back on the field. And he struggled mightily with vision, which is something, if you look on film, Elijah Collins, the transfer from Michigan State, his vision it's impeccable. I mean, it really is. It's Jaylen Warren level, which is what we've been missing. And then you have Jaden Nixon, obviously the speedster, the burner, who runs like a 10-2 and the 121.7 and the 200. He's going to be the lightning in all of this. But we tend to forget, I think, a lot of us about DeAndre Jackson. DeAndre Jackson, he's an interesting cat. Because when you're coming in with that bowling ball rep, right? 5'11", 205 pounds, 210 pounds, you get labeled. And I think one of the reasons that he got stuck with that label for so long is because we didn't get to see him play. And I think a lot of people assumed it was due to something football related. Well, realistically, it was nothing football related. Texas A&M and the NCAA, they had some transcript problems and they had a hard time meshing it all together for whatever reason. I don't know. But it was, halfway through the daggone season before he was cleared to play. And then when he did get in the game, I really like his running style. And you can't always go off of recruiting. numbers and stars, right? Because there's bust all the time, and there's people like a Justin Blackman or even a Jaden Nixon that come kind of out of nowhere and take people by surprise. But if you look at the recruiting side of things, guys, when he went to Texas A&M, it's because he just rushed for like 1,220 yards his senior year of high school. And he had offers from Auburn, Alabama, Michigan, Florida, Florida State, Nebraska, and he went to Texas A&M. It didn't exactly work out for him for whatever reason, right? He comes to Oklahoma State, has a bunch of NCAA transcript problems from Texas A&M. It was just a whole thing. It was a whole thing that he had to go through, which obviously was a direct hindrance on his playing time. And let us not forget, he's a redshirt junior, so he's even got another year after this one. And, I think he's probably the one that's going to get slept on the most, maybe turned into the power back for certain packages, which I'm fine with. And if he's relegated to that role, and that's the role that fits him best, and he's happy with it, I think you'll be happy to see the production. I'm a big proponent of DeAndre Jackson getting more carries. I would have preferred DeAndre Jackson and Ollie Gordon over Dom last year. Hell, let's be honest, we probably even could have thrown Jaden Nixon out there and produced a little bit of a better result. Again, we love Dom, but the dude he didn't have very much backfield vision. I think that the oversimplification of the offense could have been beneficial for him, but sometimes it's just time to move on. We all wish him well. We hope he does great at Baylor. It is a better fit for him schematically. That was before we changed the offense. So maybe it would have been beneficial for him to stick around, but if he sticks around, then we probably lose somebody like a DeAndre Jackson. We probably don't get somebody like an Elijah Collins, right? And the beauty for Elijah Collins is he really wanted to be at Oklahoma State, right? Sometimes when you're grabbing a transfer, you're grabbing somebody, and Gundy he said it. He openly said it. Sometimes players choose, somewhere else because it's the best option available, right? Maybe it's the highest rated Power 5. Maybe it's the only Power 5. And that's why you end up seeing some of those transfers. Elijah Collins is a little bit different case, y'all. Elijah Collins is a guy who wanted to come to Oklahoma State, and he heavily sought after that connection. And when you look at somebody like an Elijah Collins, right, everybody's going to remember his one big year at Michigan State where he rushed for 988 yards, just shy of that everybody wants to hit that 1,000-yard barrier. But, he really burst onto the scene with Michigan State. And then he redshirted 2018, 2019. He ended up starting in 12 games, had over 200 carries, again, 988 yards, 5 touchdowns. He ended up averaging like 4.5 yards a carry. And then in high school, he was the number 1 rated running back in the state of Michigan. He was like 10th overall player in the state of Michigan, according to 247. Another publication had him as the number 11 player in the state of Michigan. And he obviously chose Michigan State. But one of the things that I don't think gets talked about enough is who he picked him over, right? When you're looking at the recruiting side of things, in anybody, you really do have to kind of see, okay, what was the interest level, right? What were teams looking at when they were looking at an Elijah Collins? And his list in and of itself it's pretty crazy. Again, you can't view everything from that lens and digging back. But whenever you get somebody, right, from a Michigan State, Gundy's already said that he fits this mold of kind of what we need for this new evolutionary process in the running game. I guess it's re-evolutionary because we're going back to an older school style of system, right? Maybe see some diamond formations. Fullback's obviously going to be an integral part of the game planning now. But you do have to look at where the interest was, right? And he had offers from places like Wisconsin and Pitt and Mizzou and Purdue and Syracuse and Minnesota, Kentucky, Iowa, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Boston College. And he chose Michigan State. And then he was not only a fan favorite, right? He had that big breakout year. And then after that, he got buried behind somebody like Kenneth Walker III. Everybody knows, he was up for the Heisman, arguably should have won it, could have won it, had some injuries pop up at the very end of the season. that put him backwards a little bit, right? Put him off track a hair. But I'm really excited about what Elijah Collins is going to be able to bring. And in my personal opinion, I think he's going to compete for a starting job, and I think he's going to get a lot more carries than people might think. Obviously, we all love Ollie Gordon. We all know Ollie Gordon's most likely the future. But I think if you have a good stopgap here, like another Jaylen Warren type, Elijah Collins fits that bill. When we're talking about bills suck, right? Adulting sucks. One thing you can possibly maybe do to give yourself some more cash dollar bills, especially now that the NCAA tournament is really, really heating up, regardless of how crazy your bracket is, download FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. And if you're a new customer, you're going to get a shot at the no sweat first bet. And it's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on a multitude of things: money lines, point scorers, points scored, threes drained, so on and so forth. You need to really download FanDuel, and you need to do it now because on top of that, you're going to get a better chance of bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Don't miss out on this chance to get your hands on this no-sweat first bet. It is up to $1,000 in bonus bets back if you don't win your first bet. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so, yeah, I think DeAndre Jackson is slept on. I think that Ollie Gordon is obviously the guy who everybody thinks is going to fill that immediate role. I think Elijah Collins could step in because, again, we're different running styles. Elijah Collins' vision is phenomenal. You can envision a Jaylen Warren type of vision. And he's, guys, at 5'11", well, 6 foot, at 6 foot, 205 pounds, he already knows the physicality necessary for this running style. That's what they do in the Big Ten. That's their bread and butter in the Big Ten and in Michigan State. Michigan State has never been a team that was going to chunk it up a bunch, right? They've always been a physical team. They've always been a running team. And he was a fan favorite. And actually, when you look at the blogs from Michigan State, nothing bad about that dude leaving. A lot of people are sad that he left because, again, he was a fan favorite. He had good sales. If you look at the jersey. So they definitely are going to miss Elijah up in Michigan State. And I think that he's certainly going to push for that starting job a little bit harder than people think because of how good we all know that Ollie Gordon is. But, before Ollie Gordon, right, if we're going to have this thunder and lightning type of conversation, the next guy I think we got to talk about has got to be Jaden Nixon, right? And Jaden Nixon was the most unheralded, right? So you had DeAndre Jackson, big-time recruit, had offers from Bama, Auburn, LSU, everybody. And then Elijah Collins, another one, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Iowa, everybody. To have your pick of the litter and then choose Oklahoma State, that's a big deal, right? Jaden Nixon didn't come with all of that hype. He was like the number 970th player in the country. Now he does come out of Frisco Lone Star, same exact school as our quarterback, Garrett Rangel. Yes, we've got a lot of news coming on quarterback. I don't have enough confirmation for me to release what we're hearing, so stay tuned for that. But, I went to the same high school as Garrett Rangel, right? That's a good package to coming together. We were his only Power 5 offer. So he's not coming with all the hype, but last season he was able to put on 12, 15 pounds, right? And still be able to maintain that speed. Again, when you're running in the 10s and the 21s of the 100 meter and the 200 meter, you've got some daggone wheels. So if you can stay that fast, that quick, and continue to be that elusive, but also put on enough weight to deal with the day in, day out responsibilities of toting the rock, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't pump him up a little bit, right? Because Elijah Collins' biggest knock on him was his 40, officially timed at a 4.6. Well, what's interesting about that, and when we're talking about he has the same vision that a Jaylen Warren has. Jaylen Warren chose Oklahoma State strategically for the body by glass type of stuff. He knew the biggest knock on him At Utah State was his speed. He didn't have breakaway speed. Came to Oklahoma State. That's the number one thing he wanted to improve on. He started the season as like the third or fourth guy on the depth chart. As he's continuing to work on his speed, his elusiveness, and everything else, we didn't get to see until injury, right? There's a lot of good reports about him in the spring, in the fall, yet he started the season as like the number 3 option. But when he gets in the game, you see that lightning capability, right? A lot of people want to look back to when we had Justice Hill and Chris Carson. We also had Tyreek Hill as well. So you have these thunder and lightning combinations, and everybody loves them. So you look at somebody like an Ollie Gordon, which we're about to get to, because he is probably the starter, because he is right now. Right now, he is the starter. Is a lot going to change between now and the fall? Probably not. So unless something crazy happens, Ollie Gordon's going to be our guy. It's really a debate on the backup. And when you're saying backup and you have somebody like an Elijah Collins who does have almost a 1,000-yard season in the Big Ten, okay, that's a natural fit for him to be the number 2. But then you have somebody like a DeAndre Jackson, even though he might be relegated more of a physicality type of guy. Okay, well, he's put in his time. He had opportunities to leave. He didn't leave. He loves O State, wants to be here. Him and Xavier Benson really, really took the mantle, right? When we had some guys like Spencer Sanders and Mason Cobb leave, those were some of the guys that really took the mantle, for lack of a better term, and started to run with it, right? To get people to buy in, to get people more excited about the incoming season. So maybe that's partially why I'm very high on DeAndre Jackson. But again, this is the lightning side of it. This is the lightning side. And Jaden Nixon, I think he'll play more than people recognize. He's viewed as, the other guy. But he's the guy that's got the wiggle, the jukes, and the speed. Elijah Collins has a phenomenal vision. He's good at setting up his blocks, kind of like an Ollie Gordon. But he doesn't have the breakaway speed. Neither does Ollie Gordon. So who does? Jaden Nixon, right? So he's the lightning guy. In all of this conversation about how talented we are at running back, we've got a lot of guys that fit this new system, and then we've got Jaden Nixon as the lightning guy. So for that reason alone, don't sleep on my guy, Jaden Nixon, y'all. And he's put on, 10, 15 pounds last season, should be able to do it again this season. And still, if he can keep that speed, the dynamic we have at running back is going to be amazing to watch, regardless of what's happening on the outside. And part of this is because of the offensive line. I mean, we're pretty deep into this video, so I won't try to squeeze. We'll do O-line individually, so that way we can kind of break down, what we have there. But again, it's going to be good, guys. The O-line's going to be the best it's looked in a long time. Will that equal the production that we need? Obviously, that remains to be seen. But if you're going to have comfort in this upcoming season in any position, like last year, we had a lot of D linemen, we had a lot of wide receivers, right? We knew at this point in time last season, those were most likely the deepest positions. Well, now here we are talking about the O-line, the running back room, and the safeties. These are your deepest positions now, this year. So if you can take the continuity, again, that we had last season at the offensive line, you sprinkle it in with some of the reports now that we're much more improved on the O-line, so improved that we could have 4 new starters after returning everybody from last season. So, yeah, it wouldn't be right to squeeze O-line into this video, and we're already at almost 20 minutes, so we'll make sure O-line gets their own. O-line gets their own deal. Okay, so let's shift gears to the one that everybody expects to be the guy, Ollie Gordon, 4-star, coming out of Texas. I was reading an article earlier from Heartland about Ollie Gordon last year going into the senior season. And the article was really talking about how Oklahoma State was the biggest to offer him at the time. Well, as far as, he hadn't had any blue blood offers yet. And the article was talking about the things he can improve on, so on and so forth, when he gets to Stillwater. But it really talked about how most likely he wasn't going to end up in Stillwater because he was that good. And they knew the blue bloods were eventually going to start coming. And they did. And so we were able to hold him off, right? And honestly, I can't wait to have him on the program to kind of talk a little bit more about that. But, guys, he came in at 6'1", 200, 205, something like that. And we know he's still 6'1", but he's put on some more weight. Last season, he got more carries than was ever meant to be asked of him, right? Coming into the season. And whenever you kind of look at his running style, he does run a little bit upright, kind of like a Dom Richardson, ironically enough. But the physicality side of it, right? Gundy hinted at as the season progressed, you could see the physical wear and tear on Ollie Gordon. And I don't know. I don't buy that. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't buy that because you know what he was able to do in the West Virginia game was very, very impressive. What he was able to do in the bowl game, right? We weren't able to get the running game going. So it was really difficult to kind of piece that together. But again, you know, he chose us originally over people like Arkansas and BYU and Houston. But yeah, the heavy hitters did in fact come calling, and he stayed loyal and true. Wanted to come to O State. And realistically, we all know out of the targets for last season coming into this year, if you were a program from anywhere else, who are the guys that you're like, hey, I'd really like to steal him from O State? Who are you talking about? You're talking about your Colin Olivers. You're talking about your Kendall Daniels. You're talking about your Ollie Gordons, right? These are the guys that everybody in the country wanted. These are the guys that a lot of teams would be willing to go drop a bag of cash for. But he stayed with O State, right? And he really loves what he's doing here. I can't blame him. He's the guy right now, even with somebody as good as an Elijah Collins waiting in the wings. I do think Elijah's going to push him, but you know he's going to put on more weight. And now that he's had to grind through the entirety of the season, Gundy doesn't like to play freshmen, y'all, at all. I think obviously most of us know that. So to have a true freshman running back tote the rock as many times as he did, is that not indicative of the talent? Because Gundy overrode a lot of things that he doesn't like to do just because he sees the talent. So yes, Ollie Gordon is that dude. And yes, he has put on a little bit more weight. But Elijah Collins is coming here just like Jaylen Warren to put on more speed. And that's exactly what happened. Jaden Nixon Jaylen Warren out of his own mouth at Utah State did not have breakaway speed. He only got that in his one off season in Stillwater. That extra gear, he never had it. And he knew he always needed it. He didn't know how to get it. He'd been trying his whole life to get it. Comes to Oklahoma State, gets that in one off season. So for everybody that was trying to harp on maybe body by glass is getting too old school, so on and so forth. Now, come on, y'all. People like Jaylen Warren are proof that that is not the case. So if Elijah Collins is coming to improve his speed, we've got a track record of doing that. And that's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do. I mean, growing up, yeah, you can work on form and getting out of the gate, get out of the block, right? So like if you ran track, the way you run track and the way that you steal a base in baseball is entirely different. The way you even run that timing system is entirely different. So you do see that more often than not, you're born pretty fast or you're not. But there is proof out there that you can improve speed. Hey, Gundy. Goodness gracious, I know words are hard. Sorry. Gunnar Gundy, he went from a 4.8 40 to a 4.59 40. And that was something that his dad said you have to get faster, right? You have to have some sort of mobility. And so he worked on it. And he shaved off 2/10. That's not easy to do. So if Elijah Collins can get that same one-off season of production that Jaylen Warren was able to grasp, I think he's going to push Ollie Gordon a little bit more than people realize. But don't get it twisted. I know that Ollie Gordon's most likely definitely the future at running back position. And Ollie Gordon is probably the best candidate we've had in a few years since before Jaylen Warren to make a good shot in the NFL. So don't sit here and think that I'm undervaluing Ollie Gordon. I know he's the dude. He's the starter RB number one right now. But if injuries and anything have taught us something, especially this last year, you're going to need more than Ollie Gordon. You're going to need a lot of these guys. So do we have a 1,000-yard guy, Or do we have a bunch of dudes that get 6, 8, 900 yards? Only time will tell. But I think I'd be willing to say that we will both will have a 1,000-yard rusher plus a couple 500-yard type rushers on top of that. Maybe I'm drinking too much of the offensive line and running back Kool-Aid. Maybe I am. But I'm also not drinking the we're in a rebuild Kool-Aid, which seems to be a conversation being had. And if you haven't caught my video on it, it's the last video I did from this morning. Make sure you go check that out. Also, I'll start dropping, adding some of the videos that it recommends afterwards, and I'll start pinpointing those instead of letting the algorithm do it for me, to kind of circle it back around to some of the players that we've had on the show when we're discussing certain position groups. So I think that's all we got for this one. All right, guys, stay tuned up for this offensive line preview, because I'm very, very, very high on this O-line. Probably the highest I don't want to say ever been, but definitely this is the most comfortable I've been with where we are at on the O-line in 5, 6 years-ish, at least. So, yeah, make sure you tune back in for the breakdown on that. Until then, thank you very much for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. Do the like, do the comment, subscribe, share, all that fun jazz. And I want to hear from you in the comment section. Who do you have as your RB1? And do we get over 1,000-yard rusher, or is it more of a committee approach? I want y'all to tell me. All righty, y'all. God bless. Go Pokes. Until the next one. Later.